I still remember the way she hugged me at the door, like she hadn't ruined anything yet, like she was still just my little sister Lena, wide-eyed, heartbroken, freshly divorced, suitcase in hand. It had been 10 years since we last lived under the same roof. Back then, she was still in college, still calling me for advice about boys and bills and late-night panic attacks, and I was still the big sister with answers. But this time she came with less innocence and more perfume. I didn't question it. I welcomed her in because that's what family does, right? They show up, they stay, you make room. Daniel was the one who hesitated. He stood by the kitchen island watching her as if she were a guest at the wrong party. She could stay in the guest room, I said gently, just until she gets back on her feet. He nodded slowly, sure. But his eyes didn't match his voice. Lena settled in fast, too fast. She started baking again like she used to when we were kids. Banana bread, lemon bars, brownies that smelled exactly like childhood, she hummed while she cleaned. Wore my old robes, laughed at Daniel's terrible jokes louder than I ever had. At night, we stayed up late on the couch, wrapped in blankets, wine glasses in hand, talking about nothing and everything. She cried about her ex. I cried with her. It felt real, it felt safe, and it felt good to feel needed again, but I started noticing little things. A pause in Daniel's voice when he said goodnight to her, the way her towel showed up in our bathroom more than once. Once I found her perfume on his jacket. She laughed when I brought it up. Must have hugged him too hard, she joked, grinning like it meant nothing. I laughed too, because what else could I do? Accuse her, accuse him. I wasn't that woman, the paranoid wife, the insecure sister. I didn't want to be her, so I tucked the moment away, just another odd thing in a pile I refused to name. 2 weeks in, Lena made dinner, roast chicken. Garlic mashed potatoes, her specialty. Daniel came home late. He looked tired, distracted, said the project at the construction site was running behind. Eat something, I told him, handing him a plate. He didn't touch the chicken. But later that night, I woke up thirsty and found him in the kitchen with her, just the two of them, whispering. Lena in her silk pajamas, Daniel in his usual silence. They didn't see me. I didn't interrupt. I just watched from the shadows, heart thudding quietly. Something was happening, not loud, not obvious, but alive, breathing in my house, sleeping under my roof, wearing my robe and touching my husband and calling me sister like it still meant something. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling, wide awake, strangely calm because now I knew. Something was coming and I was done pretending it wasn't. The next morning I opened the laundry hamper and found Daniel's sweatshirt. It wasn't his, the brand was wrong, the sleeves too short, a faint lipstick stain near the collar. I knew it wasn't mine either. I folded it anyway, placed it on top of the dryer like it had always lived here. Because now I wasn't collecting laundry, I was collecting evidence. I didn't tell anyone, not Lena, not Daniel, not even myself, not out loud, but I felt it in the air. The quiet had changed shape. Our home wasn't humming anymore, it was listening. Lena started working out again. She said it helped with the stress. Tight leggings, sports bras too snug. She bent over a little too often in front of Daniel. Tossed her hair a little too freely. Asked him to help with her form when she tried planks on the living room rug. I watched from the kitchen, stirring soup I didn't plan to eat. You okay? She asked one night. I turned. Of course, why? You seem quiet. I smiled. I've been thinking a lot. About what? I shrugged, about how easy it is to mistake closeness for kindness. She blinked, confused or pretending to be. I didn't care which. A week later, I found one of her earrings on my nightstand. Just one, gold, small, familiar. I hadn't seen her wear it in years, and it definitely didn't fall off her ear in my bedroom by accident. I picked it up gently like it might still burn, then I placed it back where I found it, right on the nightstand, dead center. Let them know I saw it. Let them wonder if I'd say anything because I wasn't afraid anymore. I was patient. And patience is the scariest kind of power. I stopped sleeping next to Daniel. He didn't ask why. He said the couch was good for his back. I said nothing. Some silences aren't passive. They're calculated. They're chosen. Every morning I made coffee, kissed him on the cheek, greeted Lena like she was still my favorite person in the world. But inside me something had clicked. And when that kind of quiet clicks, it doesn't let go, it waits, it plans. It watches you walk into the trap you built with your own hands. That Sunday I drove to a bookstore outside of town. It was small, tucked between a flower shop and a dry cleaner. I asked the clerk if they had any hidden camera equipment. He blinked. I smiled. For my writing project, I lied. He sold me a pen with a lens, a motion-detecting wall plug, a tiny button camera that looked like part of a lamp. I paid in cash, no receipts, no return. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I crept down the hall like a ghost, planted one device in the living room, another in the hallway, and one in the guest room. The last one went in our bedroom under the dresser, facing just enough of the bed. It felt like betrayal, but betrayal had already been done. I was just turning the lights on. The next morning, Lena made pancakes. Daniel came in shirtless, grinning like life had finally fallen into place. I smiled as I sipped my coffee. He leaned down and kissed my head, and I let him because soon he wouldn't get the chance again. 3 days passed before I pressed play. I waited, not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted to be sure. Betrayal, when it's just a hunch, leaves room for doubt. But betrayal caught on tape, there's no turning back from that. It was just after midnight when I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Daniel was asleep, or pretending to be. Lena's door was shut, locked as always. I sat at the kitchen table, the glow of the screen lighting up the same space where we used to eat blueberry pancakes every Sunday morning. Where Lena used to sit cross-legged, joking about bad dates. Where Daniel used to reach for my hand without thinking, and then I watched them. Touching, kissing in the living room, in the hallway, in the room I used to sleep in. Sometimes when I was home, sometimes when I wasn't, sometimes when they thought I'd gone to bed. I watched it all, frame by frame, no panic, no tears, just stillness, like my body knew this was the moment it had been waiting for. The moment everything snapped into place. The earring, the perfume, the weird tension that wrapped itself around my ribs and never let go. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this wasn't a mistake, this was a choice made by both of them. Over and over again. The next morning I made breakfast, eggs, toast, sliced avocado. Daniel came in first, kissed my temple like nothing had changed. Lena followed 10 minutes later wearing one of my old cardigans. They sat at the table and talked about nothing. A Netflix show, groceries, a funny email from one of Daniel's coworkers. I nodded along, smiling, pouring coffee. Inside, I was already writing the ending. I'd been too soft for too long. But I was still the woman who raised herself from grief. The woman who survived the loss of a child, who stood by Daniel through layoffs and nights he didn't come home, who held Lena's hand through 2 breakups and a miscarriage she never told anyone else about. They thought kindness made me weak, but kindness without limits isn't kindness, it's surrender, and I was done surrendering. That evening I sat on the porch alone. The sky was a pale shade of silver, the trees swaying like they knew something was coming. I opened my phone and texted my mother, dinner at our place next Friday, bring dad, special occasion. Then I texted Daniel's parents, then Lena, family dinner, Friday, you'll be there, right? She sent back a heart emoji. Of course she would. She thought I was clueless. She thought I was still the same sister who used to give her my last piece of gum, my last $20, my trust, but this time I wasn't sharing, I was showing. Later that night I walked past their rooms. His door was cracked open, hers was dark. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening, not for voices, not for secrets, just for the silence, the kind that comes before thunder, and I smiled. Because they didn't know. The storm was me. I spent the next few days preparing, not for the meal, for the moment. The food didn't matter, not really, but it gave me cover, an excuse to move, to plan, to stay busy while the anger simmered into something sharper. I bought fresh herbs, dusted off the crystal glasses, and polished the long dining table until I could see my own reflection. I looked tired, pale, focused. I looked ready. Lena offered to help with the menu. I could make the chocolate torte Mom loves, she said, spooning yogurt into her mouth like nothing inside her was rotten. I smiled. No need, I replied, I've got it covered. Daniel glanced up from his laptop. What's the occasion again? Just family, I said, a small celebration. He narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Guilt makes people paranoid. And I wanted them just paranoid enough, not enough to run, just enough to sweat. By Thursday the house was spotless. Candles were placed, chairs arranged. A bouquet of white lilies stood in the center of the table, my mother's favorite. Not Lena's. She always said they smelled like funerals. I wondered if she'd get the symbolism. If she didn't now, she would buy dessert. That night I tested the TV. The video files were preloaded, labeled, muted until I needed them. I even tested the remote, volume up, volume down, pause, play, just in case I wanted to rewind a particular scene. Something about watching them not know made it easier to breathe. Friday arrived with too much sun. Too much cheer for what I had planned. I wore navy blue, not black, too obvious, but dark enough to feel grounded. I curled my hair loosely, applied a soft shade of lipstick. I looked like a woman about to host a perfectly normal dinner party, which, in a way, I was, just with one final course no one expected. The doorbell rang at 6:00 sharp. My mother came in carrying a bottle of wine. Dad followed with a bouquet of roses. Daniel's parents arrived soon after with a casserole I'd pretend to eat later. We made small talk in the kitchen. Lena floated between rooms, pouring drinks, laughing too loudly. Daniel looked tense. Good, he should. The house smelled like rosemary and baked garlic, but underneath it something was rotting, and only I could smell it. We sat down to eat at 6:45, roasted chicken, herbed potatoes, warm bread. A meal that took hours to prepare and minutes to destroy. Daniel gave a toast. Lena giggled. My mother dabbed her eyes. I barely spoke, just nodded, smiled, and refilled glasses like a woman surrounded by love. Then, somewhere between the second and third course, I stood up. I made a little something, I said, reaching for the remote. A slideshow, I added, photos, memories, family moments. Everyone turned toward the TV as it flickered to life. First slide, our wedding. Second, Lena and me as children. Third, Daniel holding our dog in the backyard, normal, familiar, then. Frame 4, Lena in my robe, Daniel shirtless. A timestamp in the corner, my mother gasped. Lena froze. Daniel dropped his fork. The next frame, them kissing on my couch. My voice cut the silence. I just thought everyone should see what kind of family we are now. No one spoke. Lena turned pale. Daniel stood too quickly, knocking over his glass. Grace, he said, voice trembling, we can explain. I shook my head slowly. No, I said, you can leave. He looked at his parents. Lena looked at me, her lips trembled. You don't understand. You're right, I said, I don't. I turned off the TV, walked to the door, opened it, and waited. They didn't argue, they walked out like they'd rehearsed it, and maybe they had. But this time I got to write the final scene. The house was quiet after they left, not peaceful, not yet, just hollow, like it had exhaled and hadn't found a reason to breathe back in. My mother stayed behind. She stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the blank TV screen like it still might speak. Grace, she whispered, how long have you known? I sat down on the edge of the armchair, suddenly so tired my bones ached. Long enough, I said. She walked over, sat beside me, took my hand. You didn't scream, she said. You didn't break a plate, you didn't hit her. I wanted to, I admitted, but anger never came in the way I expected. No fire, no shouting, just stillness. Cold, sharp stillness, like standing in snow with bare feet. It doesn't burn until it does. They stayed at a motel that night. Lena texted me once. You humiliated me, that was all. Not I'm sorry, not can we talk, just ego bruised and bleeding. I didn't respond. Daniel didn't text at all. Cowardice rarely uses full sentences. The next morning I stripped the bed in the guest room, her sheets, her scent. Her forgotten hair tie on the nightstand. I tied the garbage bag tight and tossed it in the bin outside. Then I opened the windows, let the cold in, let the ghosts out. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I made tea. Because when your whole life burns down, sometimes all you can do is boil water and sit very still. People started to hear, a neighbor, then a cousin, then someone from Daniel's work. I didn't speak to them, let them guess. Let them invent their versions. The truth had already been said, clearly, publicly, painfully. I wasn't about to repeat it just to entertain someone else's curiosity. Pain isn't gossip, it's sacred. Daniel came back 4 days later. I heard his car before I saw it. He didn't knock, just stood on the porch, shifting from foot to foot, eyes red, hands in his coat pockets. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He stared at me. I messed up, he said. But we can fix this. I blinked. Fix what? I asked. He swallowed. Us. There is no us, I said calmly. You buried it. I still love you. I almost laughed. No, I said, you loved comfort, routine, ownership. That's not the same. He looked down and for a second I almost pitied him. Almost. Where's Lena? I asked. Gone, he said. Left town, said she couldn't stay after what happened. After what she did, you mean? He didn't answer. I need closure, he said finally. You already got it, I replied. It came wrapped in silence. I closed the door, locked it, and went to pour another cup of tea. That night I slept in the center of my bed, not on one side. Not curled toward an empty space, just me, breathing evenly. Finally, 2 weeks later I took Daniel's name off the mailbox. I didn't tell him, didn't warn him, I just peeled the letters off like dead skin. Slow, quiet, final. Then I stood back and stared at what was left, just my name, no hyphen, no trace. It was strange how light that made me feel, like I had finally vacuumed out the last bit of smoke from a house that once burned while I smiled through the flames. I boxed up his things the next morning, tools, sweatshirts, a pair of old work boots he never cleaned, and the wedding album. I thought I'd cry when I touched it, but I didn't. I flipped through the pages like a stranger. There we were, smiling. There she was, in the second row, tears in her eyes, tears I used to believe meant something pure. Now I knew better. Lena didn't cry out of joy that day, she cried because she lost. And years later she came back to collect what she thought she was owed. I shipped the box to his office with no note inside. He'd know that was enough. The next week I bought new bedsheets, all white, clean, untouched. I repainted the guest room, turned it into a little reading space, warm lighting, a single chair, a record player in the corner. I placed a framed quote on the shelf, and then she learned to sleep without monsters under the bed because she'd already faced them wide awake. It wasn't decoration, it was a declaration. One afternoon I ran into my neighbor Carla. She gave me a look like she was waiting for drama to spill out of my mouth. How are you holding up? She asked gently. I smiled. Better than expected. She hesitated, then softly, we saw him coming by a few times. I nodded. He won't anymore. Carla looked down at her feet, then back at me. Good, she said, you deserve peace. That word again, peace. It doesn't come in through the front door, it sneaks in through cracks you once tried to seal with denial. That evening I opened a bottle of red wine I'd been saving since our anniversary 3 years ago. I poured one glass, only one. I took it to the porch and sat down as the sun dipped low. The wind carried a hint of spring even though the air was still cold. I watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. No calls came, no messages, no more apologies. Just stillness, and my name on the mailbox. Finally, all mine. I was dusting the shelf in the hallway when I heard the envelope slide under the front door. Thick, handwritten, no name. I picked it up like it might burn me. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not from Daniel, not from a lawyer, from Lena. The handwriting hadn't changed since we were kids. Curvy, too soft for the words I was about to read. Grace. I know I don't deserve your time. I know I don't deserve space in your head anymore, but I need to say this somewhere, so I'm saying it here. I never meant for it to happen. I stopped reading, not because it hurt, but because the sentence was so familiar. The same words Daniel had whispered the last night we ever shared a bed. I never meant for it to happen. As if betrayal was an accident, as if bodies just fall into each other, as if lies were just misplaced words, not weapons. I read on. You always had everything figured out. People liked you without trying. Daniel, he always looked at you like you were the sun, and I've always been in your shadow. There it was, the real confession. Not sorry for what I did to you, just sorry it didn't stay hidden. I didn't plan it, Grace. It started when he came to visit me in New York. Remember, the conference? That was the first time we kissed. You had just had your miscarriage. He said you'd shut him out. He said you didn't look at him the same, and I believed him. I sat down, slow, like gravity just remembered I existed. New York, 6 years ago. The same week I buried my child. While I was learning how to breathe again, he was kissing my sister in a hotel room. The betrayal didn't start in my house. It started in my grief, and they used it like a door they could walk through. I folded the letter in half, then again until it was a small square. Then I threw it in the sink and turned on the tap, watched the ink melt into nothing, let her words drown the way they never let me. That was her closure, not mine. But that night, that cursed stupid night, I dreamt about her, not her now, not the version that smiled behind my back. I dreamt of her at 12, sitting on the floor of my bedroom crying because she failed her math test. I'm just not smart like you, she said between sobs, and I remember pulling her close, promising her she was enough, that she was mine. I woke up to wet cheeks. It wasn't pity, it wasn't pain, it was rage. The kind that comes late. But when it comes, it levels everything. I drove the next day to the motel where Daniel had last stayed. I knew he was still in town. Word spreads in suburbs like wildfire. I didn't call, I didn't knock. I walked into the front office and handed the clerk an envelope. Inside, photos, printouts, the lawyer's letter, and one note just for him. I finally understand the difference between letting go and giving up. I'm not giving up on love, I'm just done giving it to the wrong people. The clerk didn't ask questions, I didn't offer any. I drove home with the windows down, air cold against my skin, heart pounding like I'd just outrun something with teeth. And I'd outrun the worst version of myself. The one who begged, the one who explained, the one who thought love was the reward for being quiet. She was gone now and I didn't mourn her. Spring came faster than expected. The trees outside my window bloomed in soft pink explosions, and for the first time in years I noticed. I mean really noticed. It used to be just another season. Now it felt like an exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I didn't redecorate the house. People assumed I would paint the walls, change the furniture, throw away everything that reminded me of them, but I didn't. I kept the same couch, the same dishes. The same curtains Lena once helped me hang, not out of nostalgia, out of defiance. They don't get to own the things I built, they don't get to take my taste, they don't get to ruin everything. I let them have enough. Instead, I started adding a new bookshelf in the living room filled with novels I used to love but forgot existed. A record player in the corner spinning jazz in the early evenings while I cooked for one. I hung new art pieces from local women, sharp lines, loud colors, unapologetic. There was a small painting above my desk, barely the size of a dinner plate, just one word painted in red, mine. That one made me cry the day it arrived, not because of what it said, but because of how long I had gone without believing it. Charles called. He was one of the few people who didn't disappear when everything exploded, a mutual friend. Someone who had known Daniel but never liked him. He never said that out loud until after. I think he was being kind. Coffee? He asked. I almost said no, but I didn't. We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. The kind with chipped mugs and old wood floors and no one in a rush. He looked at me for a long time before he spoke. You look lighter. I smiled. I feel it. Free. Not yet, I said, but close. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. We started walking once a week. Not dates, not yet, just walking, talking, breathing without pressure. It felt like rinsing out wounds I didn't realize were still sore, not because he was special, but because I was. And I finally wanted someone who treated me like I mattered without needing to steal anything from me first. One evening, I stood in the doorway of the guest room, Lena's old room, and stared at the now empty shelves. I didn't cry. I didn't feel vengeance, I just felt tired. Tired in the way people feel after surviving something they shouldn't have had to survive in the first place. So I picked up a box of candles, a soft rug, and a small round table. And I turned it into something new, not a guest room, a space for myself. A space that didn't ask me to make room for anyone else's needs, just mine. I kept one photo of her. One, it sat inside a drawer, face down. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to remember what betrayal looks like in its beginning, when it's still dressed up as family, still whispering kindness before it devours you whole. I would never be fooled again. Not by love. Not by loyalty, not by blood, and yet. I didn't hate her, I hated the version of myself who believed silence was survival. And that woman, she was never coming back. It started small. A neighbor asking if I'd help organize the library fundraiser. Then a local magazine wanting to interview me, not about the scandal but about rebuilding, reinvention, quiet strength. I said yes. Not because I wanted to be seen, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. The article was short, honest, no drama. They titled it What Grace Built. I didn't realize how far my story had spread until a woman tapped my arm in the grocery store. You're her, she said, the one who stayed calm. I smiled. No, I'm the one who got smart. She laughed, then she cried right there next to a stack of canned tomatoes, and I let her. Because when women find each other in the rubble, we don't need introductions, just breath and space. And the kind of silence that feels like safety, not shame. Lena never wrote again, not a call, not an email, but I heard things. She moved south, started over, changed her hair, tried to become someone new. I hope she did, because I know what it's like to live with the weight of your worst decisions and still wake up the next day. I wouldn't wish that heaviness on anyone, not even her, but that doesn't mean I wanted her back. Forgiveness isn't a door you reopen, it's a lock you put on from the inside, and I had locked it. Twice. Daniel remarried. Quickly, from what I was told, to someone younger, quiet, a teacher. I think she sent me a message once, just one line, "Thank you for letting him go." I didn't reply, she'd understand someday. Probably the same way I did, through pain, through confusion, through the slow realization that some men don't love, they possess. And when they lose you, they don't mourn, they replace. But me, I wasn't replaced, I rebuilt. Charles kissed me for the first time on a Wednesday. No candles, no flowers, just after dinner. My hands smelled like dish soap. He looked at me for a long time and said, "You're not what I expected." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that good?" "It's real," he said. "That was better than good." It was true. I still talk to my reflection sometimes. Late at night, bathroom light humming above, I touch the lines near my eyes, the silver in my hair. The softness in my voice that used to sound like apology, now it sounds like peace. I ask her, "Did we really do it?" And she always answers, "We did more than survive, we chose to live." I didn't expect peace to feel like this. So quiet, not silence like before, not the suffocating kind filled with secrets and what-ifs. This was different. This was earned. This was the kind of silence that held you gently. The kind that wrapped around your shoulders like a blanket instead of a noose. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window just right. I stood there, hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching the dust dance in the light. There was no chaos. No slammed doors, no lies softening themselves as excuses, no apology shaped like a hook, just me and the sound of nothing breaking. The mail came around noon. Among the flyers and utility bills was a thick white envelope. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Lena. I didn't open it. I didn't even bring it inside. I stood at the edge of the porch for a moment, then turned, walked to the trash bin and dropped it in. Not out of hate, out of completion. Some chapters don't need epilogues, especially the ones where the villain thinks they're still a part of your story. That evening, Charles came over with tulips and a slow smile. We didn't talk about the past, we talked about weekend markets, old jazz, and the smell of garlic on a Sunday evening. He stayed until the stars came out, and when he left, he kissed my forehead, soft, steady, no promises. Just presence. It was more than enough. Before bed, I opened the guest room door, now my room filled with books, soft blankets, and things that were mine alone. I lit a candle, sat in the chair by the window. Looked out into the dark like it owed me something. It didn't, and that was okay, because for once I didn't feel owed. I felt whole. I felt like a woman who had been ripped apart and stitched herself back together without waiting for someone to save her. Not flawless, but free. People still whisper sometimes. They remember the dinner, the scandal, the video, the way I stayed calm while everything fell apart around me. Let them whisper. They don't know that the real story didn't end at that table. It ended here, with me, on my terms, in a life where I trust the silence because I no longer fear what it might reveal, in a body that's mine again. In a name on the mailbox that no longer shares space, and in a house where the door finally, fully, beautifully stays closed.